Tonight, President Biden unveils new border restrictions.
To protect America as a land that welcomes immigrants, we must first secure the border and secure it now.
What the new policy means for migrants coming into the United States illegally.
We've just crossed the border into Mexico to hear what this executive order means for people on this side of the border.
The CBS Evening News starts now. Good evening, I'm James Brown in for Nora O'Donnell, and in just hours at 12:01 a.m. Eastern Time, President Biden's aggressive new border restrictions take effect. The impact of this executive action will be immediate. Soon, U.S. immigration officials will be authorized to deport large numbers of migrants without processing their asylum claims. The restrictions will stay in effect until illegal crossings dip below 1,500 migrants a day, and they'll be triggered again if crossings spike. We have team coverage from the border to the White House, and that's where we start with CBS's Nancy Cordes. Nancy, this is a dramatic election year move. What does this mean?
JB, what this means is that starting tomorrow, most migrants who cross the border illegally will not be allowed to seek U.S. asylum or remain in the U.S. They will be sent back to Mexico or their home country, and this will continue until illegal crossings drop to a level we have not seen in years.
Republicans have left me no choice.
Flanked by border officials and Democratic governors, President Biden announced sweeping restrictions to the decades-old asylum system.
This ban will remain in place until the number of people trying to enter illegally is reduced to a level that our system can effectively manage.
The rate of illegal crossings has fallen from its peak last winter, but remains historically high. And polls show immigration is a top issue for voters who consistently give Donald Trump higher marks.
On day one, we will seal the border.
But progressives in Congress argued that today's move by Biden undermined American values and abandoned people fleeing violence and unstable conditions, while Republicans who have urged Biden to take executive action slammed him today for doing just that.
Why didn't you do this in 2021? Why didn't you do this in 2022?
If he was concerned about the border, he would have done this a long time ago.
The restrictions are sure to face legal challenges. The ACLU telling CBS News today, we intend to sue. A ban on asylum is illegal, just as it was when Trump unsuccessfully tried it. Biden insisted his approach is more humane than Trump's.
I'll never separate children from their families at the border. I will not ban people from this country because of their religious beliefs.
My colleague Lilia Luciano is at the border near Tucson, Arizona, one of the busiest sectors for migrant crossings this year.
We've just crossed into Nogales, Mexico, to hear about what this executive order means for folks on this side of the border.
I think it's devastating news.
Joanna Williams runs the Kino Border Initiative, serving migrants in Nogales, Mexico.
Well, what's been interesting in the last several months is it actually hasn't been that busy. Here, and in this sector, the numbers have been going down. The timing of this order is therefore purely political.
Last year.
You've been here since October of last year.
People like Pedro Solis wait as long as 8 months for an appointment to ask for asylum using a U.S. government app. With no luck, many giving up.
So the problem right now isn't that people don't want to use the CBP One app. They're applying for an appointment every single day, but there aren't enough appointments available. And again, this order doesn't increase that number of appointment availability at all.
What's the consequence of deterrence policies from where you stand?
Different policies of deterrence have been in effect for over 20 years here at the border, and what they lead to is an increase in deaths. Their other option is to try to go out into the desert and avoid finding Border Patrol. And this is 2 days before our first heat wave of the summer.
And today, Arizona lawmakers passed a proposal to ask voters on November whether to make crossing unlawfully from Mexico into the state a state crime. JB?
Lilia Luciano and Nancy Cordes, thank you so much. Jurors in Hunter Biden's federal gun trial got their first look at key evidence today. A photo of Hunter Biden shirtless, pictures of drugs, and the gun application document at the center of the case. CBS's Scott McFarland was inside the courtroom for the dramatic first day of testimony.
An emotional first day in the trial of Hunter Biden. With the First Lady and Hunter Biden's wife seated behind the president's son, prosecutors and an FBI agent witness played long clips of Biden's 2021 audiobook of his memoirs, in which he narrated his descent into addiction to crack cocaine in 2018.
I used my superpower, finding crack anytime, anywhere, less than a day after landing at LAX in the spring of 2018.
Former federal prosecutor Tom Dupree.
Prosecutors will tell you that there are few things more effective before a jury than being able to show the jury what the defendant said. In this case, hearing the defendant's own voice describing his struggles with addiction and the fact that he was using illegal controlled substances right around the time he bought this gun.
Prosecutors for Special Counsel David Weiss opened their case, telling the 6-man, 6-woman Delaware jury no one is above the law. Addiction may not be a choice, but lying and buying a gun is a choice. Biden has pleaded not guilty to unlawfully possessing a gun while using or addicted to drugs and making false statements applying for the gun in October 2018 for not acknowledging drug use at the time. Biden's defense attorney today argued the president's son didn't knowingly make false statements because he was seeking sobriety and, like other addicts, experienced a deep state of denial.
They're really trying to paint Hunter Biden as someone who was making good faith effort to get himself clean, to get his life back in order.
Biden's ex-wife Kathleen and Hallie Biden, his brother's widow with whom he was also romantically linked, will testify as early as tomorrow. And prosecutors have warned the jurors it'll be embarrassing testimony for Hunter Biden. JB?
Scott McFarland, thank you so much. Attorney General Merrick Garland pushed back today against what he calls dangerous attacks on the Justice Department. Garland appeared before the House Judiciary Committee amid threats from Republicans to hold him in contempt of Congress. Garland accused Republicans of spreading false conspiracy theories suggesting the Justice Department was involved in former President Donald Trump's historic conviction last week by a New York jury.
These repeated attacks on the Justice Department are unprecedented and they are unfounded. These attacks have not and they will not influence our decision-making. I will not be intimidated, and the Justice Department will not be intimidated.
Garland also shot down the baseless claim that federal law enforcement was cleared to use deadly force against Trump during a search for classified documents at Mar-a-Lago. Now to the brutal and dangerous heat in the West. At least 4 cities saw record-breaking heat today, and in the coming days, it's only expected to get hotter from California to Texas. For a look at how hot it will get, let's bring in CBS Bay Area meteorologist Paul Hagan. Good evening, Paul.
JB, good evening. We're getting an early jump on summer in the southwestern United States with temperatures into the 90s and low 100s today, and tomorrow promises to be even hotter. These are Wednesday's forecast highs ranging from the upper 90s in Reno and 104 in Sacramento to 109 record-tying degrees in Las Vegas, just short of record territory in Phoenix, topping out at 110 degrees and well into the 90s for Denver and Albuquerque, even up to 104 degrees in El Paso. Now, it's not surprising that this part of the country is hot. What's surprising is that it's this hot this early in the season, and that has prompted excessive heat warnings and heat advisories that extend from California and Arizona into Nevada and then eastward into Texas. And there is a fingerprint of climate change associated with this. A metric called the Climate Shift Index quantifies how much more likely an extreme weather event like this heat wave is due to the influence of climate change, 2 to 5 times more likely for this particular event. And this kind of heat this early in the season essentially cooks the vegetation. It increases the wildfire threat. But JB, there is good news. The heat wave is expected to break as we head into the weekend.
Paul Hagan with the hot report. Thank you so much. Now to a CBS News exclusive with a Jewish U.S. Army major who resigned to protest U.S. support for Israel in its war against Hamas. Until yesterday, Harrison Mann worked in the Middle East Bureau of the Defense Intelligence Agency. In his first TV interview, the 13-year Army veteran tells CBS's Jim Axelrod why he feels he can no longer serve.
Israel's response to October 7th troubled former Army Major Harrison Mann from the start.
They were dropping 6,000 bombs a day. They were burning through munitions,
exhausting their supply.
You know, it was very easy to link our support, which I was part of, to the killing in Gaza.
What bothered this intelligence officer specializing in the Middle East the most? His view that the Israelis were targeting Palestinian civilians indiscriminately and that U.S. weapons made it possible.
Were the Israelis using American weapons against civilians in Gaza?
I can say almost certainly yes.
But were they doing so intentionally?
I don't know how you kill 35,000 civilians by accident.
Israel insists it's doing its best to limit civilian casualties and that Hamas uses civilians as human shields. But that wasn't enough. Weeks later, Mann resigned, later explaining in a letter.
At some point, whatever the justification, you're either advancing a policy that enables the mass starvation of children or you're not.
You felt your work was directly connected to starving children.
Yes.
There's going to be times when there's members that have different views. Certainly you're right to go ahead and get out, and I'll just leave it at that.
I decided I would resign.
More than a half dozen government officials have publicly resigned to protest U.S. support for Israel's war. Mann is the first from the military, the first from the intelligence community, and the first who's Jewish.
I think it's important to understand, just this is from a security perspective, Israel is not under existential threat.
And what do you say to American Jews who would say to you, what are you talking about?
If you are somebody who is really motivated by the concern to protect Jewish life, you should be fighting for them to conduct it in a way that does not turn basically the whole world against them.
The grandson of Jews who fled the anti-Semitism of Eastern Europe knows his stance will create some harsh blowback.
I didn't really feel like I had that much of a choice.
But he feels the only way to influence U.S. policy is to no longer assist those who make it. Jim Axelrod, CBS News, Washington.
A new gambling scandal is rocking Major League Baseball. One player is now banned for life for betting on his own team's games. 4 others are suspended. And these moves come as a former interpreter for Dodgers superstar Shohei Ohtani pleaded guilty in another case related to betting. Here's CBS's Carter Evans.
Tonight, the interpreter for one of baseball's biggest stars says he's guilty of stealing almost $17 million from Shohei Ohtani. Ippei Mizuhara says he used that money to pay his gambling debts to a bookie. He faces a maximum of 33 years in prison.
Mr. Ohtani is considered a victim in this case.
This as Major League Baseball is cracking down on 5 players for betting on the game. 4 of them received 1-year suspensions. But infielder Tucupita Marcano got the ultimate punishment, a lifetime ban for allegedly betting on his own major league team. The league says Marcano wagered more than $150,000 on baseball, including more than 24 bets on the Pittsburgh Pirates when he was an active player, but out with an injury.
It just feels like this is the tip of an iceberg, and it's only going to get more complicated and more messy as we go on.
Now, the league says none of the bets impacted the outcome of any games. Last year, Americans legally wagered nearly $14 billion on baseball. JB?
Carter Evans, thank you. A Texas radio host says his wife nearly died after she was denied proper medical care after a miscarriage in a state with one of the strictest abortion laws. The CBS News exclusive is next. A Texas radio host is sharing a harrowing story about the struggles his wife went through after a miscarriage that he says almost killed her. That in a state with one of the strictest abortion laws. CBS News is not naming his wife at her request, and she doesn't want to speak at this point. But CBS's Omar Villafranca spoke to her husband for this exclusive interview.
Ryan Hamilton says his wife was nearly 13 weeks pregnant with their second child when she called to tell him she was having a miscarriage.
She said that our baby has no heartbeat.
Medical records reviewed by CBS News show his wife was seen at a SurePoint Emergency Center branch near their home in North Texas.
We were told she could take a medication to finish what had already started at home.
Hamilton's wife was prescribed misoprostol, a drug that induces labor and is used for both miscarriages and abortions. But after 2 days,
It's not working. So she goes back in, and that doctor says, due to the current stance, I cannot prescribe this medicine for you. So you just assume the stance of the state of Texas because of the law? What are we gonna do? Leave the baby inside her so she can get an infection, get sepsis, that can kill her?
Hamilton immediately drove his wife to another hospital an hour away. He asked CBS News not to name the hospital.
What do you think the delay is?
I think the delay is their confusion on what they're allowed to do. That's what it feels like. They feel scared. The doctors feel scared.
According to Texas law, abortions are illegal once a fetal heartbeat is detected, with exceptions for medical emergencies.
They said it was not enough of an emergency to perform a DNC.
DNC stands for dilation and curettage, a surgical procedure to remove fetal tissue. It's used for both miscarriages and abortions. The law does not require there to be a medical emergency to perform a DNC if there is no cardiac activity. Doctors opted to give Hamilton's wife a higher dose of medication and sent her home.
I go into the bathroom, and she is on the bathroom floor. There's blood where she fell from the toilet to the floor. She's unconscious.
Did you think at any point that you were going to lose your wife?
Yes. Yeah.
So what happens next?
At that point, we're able to verify that the baby is no longer with her. Oh.
What do you want people to know about your experience?
I want people to know that this really happens. Everything in her life right now that she's having to do to get better is not just a reminder of the baby that we lost. It's a reminder of what they put her through.
SurePoint Emergency Center said it couldn't comment, citing patient privacy laws. The other hospital told CBS News it follows federal and Texas law in accordance with national standards of care. And Hamilton told me he does not plan to sue any of the hospitals, but he hopes his story helps other families. JB.
Omar Villafranca, thank you. AT&T investigates what caused a nationwide problem with cell phone calls. We'll have the details next. AT&T cell phone users were hit with a nationwide glitch today. Customers in numerous cities were not able to complete calls between carriers. A company spokesperson said calls between AT&T users were not impacted, nor were 911 calls. Federal officials are investigating a hot air balloon accident that left 3 people injured. It happened Sunday evening in Indiana. The balloon ran into power lines, causing the pilot and 2 passengers to suffer burn injuries before crashing to the ground. Heart of America is next with a mentorship program that's changing the lives of New York City students and a celebration of their success. Finally, tonight's Heart of America and the power of mentoring. In the nation's largest school district, where more than 70% of the students are low income, hundreds gathered last week for a first-of-its-kind red carpet affair. The Key Awards celebrated those at the heart of New York City Public Schools' mentoring initiatives. Whether it's college guidance, professional development, or a personal bond, these mentors are helping thousands of students unlock their full potential. High school senior Isabella Santillan is headed to Syracuse University in the fall, and she credits her mentor, Crystal Vega, for helping her get there.
She's just been a guiding light in my high school experience, and I feel like I wouldn't have gotten this far without her.
Just being there and being able to give back, I feel, is what's going to help our youth to continue to grow and strive.
The mentors and mentees of New York City Public Schools, tonight's Heart of America. And that's tonight's CBS Evening News. For Nora O'Donnell, I'm James Brown. Good night.